Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 John Deere Classic Initial Research Show. Hope you had a fantastic Rocket Mortgage. Hope you had the Cam Davis in the outright. That would have paid off very, very well for you. Hope you had played all of the Akshay Bhatia, the Minwoo Lee, avoided the Stephen Yeager, the Matt Wallace, who I unfortunately was very high on. So hopefully you had a good Rocket Mortgage. Let me know in the comments or in chat if you are able to catch a show live how your week went. For me personally, it was not a very good week. I did not get a whole lot correct. Was very high on Taylor Pendrith. He made the cut to a very poor finish. Didn't have a lot of Minwoo Lee. Did have all the Akshay, but everybody had Akshay. Everybody seemingly had Minwoo Lee, so wasn't able to separate myself. And the unique plays that I had, other than Dylan Wu, who was a very good suggestion on my part. Other than Dylan Wu, none of my unique plays panned out. So it was not a very good week for me in the slightest. I had a lot of Tom Kim as well. So we're going to try to rebound off two pretty bad weeks for the John Deere Classic, a long-standing event on the PGA Tour. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Listen, there are a lot of great analytic tools out there. No doubt about that. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. If you have Fantasy National, or if you are going to invest in Fantasy National, you're not going to have to listen to a moron like me. You're going to play all the Akshay Bhatia. You're going to play all the Minwoo Lee. And you're going to have the power at your fingertips week in and week out to succeed in all of your golf wagering endeavors. So go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where tomorrow I will post some research around the past winners of the John Deere Classic, the patterns or any commonalities that they share leading into the tournament, and the players in the field this week who match that pattern. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests that I play. I did play the 150 max entry, the penny contest, if you will, this past week. So that was a fun experience. First time I've ever done a 150 max entry contest. But if you want to see those pieces of content, both the weekly betting card and the top player usage in the DFS contest I play, that comes out every Wednesday evening over on X after the Calls DFS Tactics show. So make sure you give me a follow over at X if you want to see that. And then Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation. And then he continues to update you throughout the week with his own version of course history and recent form. Have enjoyed working with Gabe. He too played the 150 max entry, so we had a lot of discussion last week on strategies and builds and all that stuff. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening as we continue the DFS talk over there. It's always a great discussion with those folks over there. So make sure you are supporting him over on social media. And again, subscribe to that article. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. In addition to anything Rocket Mortgage that crossed your mind, or if you had a lot of success, by all means, please let me know. And then moving forward to the John Deere, do you think Patrick Cantley is the overwhelming favorite? He is the biggest name there. Jordan Spieth is also here. So who do you think are the top players here this week? Who do you think we should be looking out for? What kind of skill set should we be looking out for? How much do you know of TPC Deer Run and all of that? So let's do our initial research for the 2024 John Deere Classic. And we start, as we always do on a Sunday evening, over at the GCSAA tournament fact sheet. Now, you will notice that it is last year's tournament fact sheet. The GCSAA has not sent out or released this year's tournament fact sheet yet. We will take a look tomorrow, a casual look tomorrow, and see if it's been updated. But as far as I know, TPC or Deer Run has not changed over the years much at all. The last renovations or anything, I believe, came back in the mid-2000s, 2007, 6 or so. So this course has been very consistent on the PGA Tour. It's been a long-standing event. It's been seen quite a bit. So not a whole lot should surprise us this week. As you see, we are in Silvis, Illinois, at TPC Deer Run for the John Deere Classic. TPC Deer Run is a DA Wabering design. While we don't have anything architect filter-wise in Fantasy National around DA Wabering, he does have his hands on a couple of courses on the PGA Tour. So if you are interested in perhaps taking a look at DA Wabering designs, you can look for that. And then TPC Deer Run is a typical par 71. You have your 4 par 3s, 3 par 5s. It's, I guess, average length, maybe slightly shorter, just under 7,300 yards as a par 71. The thing is, these greens are fast. With the Midwest in summer, you get a lot of heat, a lot of storms and wind, as I can attest to being in the Midwest. So these greens can get pretty fast. They can get pretty fast sometimes, and I believe last year they even had a round of lightning speed greens. Speaking of the greens, this is the only course that I know specifically has this L93 bent, but they are bent grass, so we'll be able to check some bent grass filters in Fantasy National. The greens bent, the fairways are actually bent as well, and then the rough, really the only defense the course has, other than perhaps some really high winds, is this long rough. It's 4 inches of bluegrass and fescue. It's kept very long. Again, it's about the only defense the course has. As you see, there are only 3 holes with water in play. The greens, slightly smaller than average on the PGA Tour. PGA Tour is roughly 6,000. I think it's technically a little bit under 6,000 square feet. So these are, slightly smaller than average on the PGA Tour, but not very difficult in that regard, other than maybe the speed if players aren't used or accustomed to faster lightning speed greens. Again, only 3 holes with water in play. A lot of fairway here, and the fairways in the landing zones are pretty darn generous, about 30 to 35 yards wide. Just pretty darn generous fairways here. So really, again, the rough is about the only defense the course has. So there's a look, at least at last year's TPC Deer Run tournament fact sheet, or John Deere tournament fact sheet. Again, the key takeaways: DA Wabering design. He's got his hands on a couple of courses on the PGA Tour. This is a typical par 71, meaning 4 par 3s, 3 par 5s, fast or even lightning bent greens that are slightly smaller than the Tour average. Very forgiving fairways. The key is you have to be in that fairway, because that rough is pretty hard to play out of. So there's a look at least last year's tournament fact sheet, and again, we'll update this tomorrow if there is any significant changes when this year's tournament fact sheet is released. So now we move to Fantasy National and look at the players in the field this week. Again, Patrick Cantlay being the probably highest rated player, most well known. Sung Jae is here. Our defending champion is Sepp Straka. Jordan Spieth is here as well. But this tournament typically has lacked in strength of field, just due to the position it is on the calendar, with players wanting to rest up before going over to Scotland and England to prepare for the Open Championship. This tournament has generally just lacked strong fields. This year's might be slightly stronger than in years past, but still lacking a whole lot of big names. So no architect filter, no length of course filter. So again, in the last 24 rounds, just in the immediacy of the past maybe 3 to 4 months, our top players in the field this week so far: Sung Jae, Patrick Cantlay, Keith Mitchell, Mav McNeely, Aaron Rai, Sepp Straka, Davis Thompson, Justin Lauer, Jacob Bridgman, and Ben Griffin. I am curious if the Rocket Mortgage is in here. So it is not yet. So this will change slightly come tomorrow. Of course, Bridgman played well. Lauer, who I was really high on with a T25. Thompson played well. Keith Mitchell might drop considering he missed the cut, etc. So just a look at some of the players, or the 10 players who have played the best in the past 24 rounds. We'll be able to add a couple of filters here, but first let's jump into the course breakdown and the historic conditions. Much like last week with the Rocket Mortgage, although not to such an extreme, TPC Deer Run generally plays easy. You see only one round of average last year. The other three were easy, much the same, or the exact same in 2022, 2021. A couple rounds of average. What you won't find are rounds that are difficult. Generally just easy, maybe average. It's a pretty standard layout, pretty easy track for professionals here at TPC Deer Run. We see the greens have always been bent. They are actually pretty receptive because they have to water them after rounds, just due to, again, that Midwestern heat, a lot of wind, thunderstorms can come in. So they do water them fairly significantly. So the greens are pretty soft, and that leads to the good scoring conditions. You see the green speeds have been fast. They were average more so at the beginning of the 2000 teens, but they've been sped up a little bit throughout the years. Every single round, we didn't get a reading in the round 4 of 2022, interestingly enough, but I'm going to assume this was fast. Every single round the past 2 years has been fast, so more so leaning towards fast bent greens. I thought we had some lightning here. Doesn't look like it, at least according to Fantasy National. But there's a look at the historic conditions. Now we'll come into the course breakdown. Again, just highlighting the ease of the course. We do have one pretty darn difficult par 4. The par 4 ninth plays to a couple of tenths of a shot over par. The par 4 18th, 1500ths. But not a whole lot of holes here that play over par. In fact, you got 200ths here as the sixth most difficult hole. So there are bogeys to be had, especially on the very difficult closing holes during Thursday and Friday's play. But to emphasize the ease here, let's look at the 3 par 5s. A half a shot under par, par 5 second. A quarter of a shot under par, and a little bit more than a third of a shot under par. So the par 5s are extremely gettable. We do have I will say, semi-drivable par 4. This par 4 is drivable when they move the tees up. You see on the scorecard it measures 361. It can play short, much shorter than that if they decide to make that a drivable par 4. That's why you see a 1% eagle rate. But a very easy hole. Plays to 3/10 of a shot under par as a par 4. The opening hole, a few shots under par, but a lot of just okay, decent scoring chances here, especially throughout that front 9, 4 through 8. All of these holes play marginally under par, so if a player is playing extremely well, do not be surprised if they go on a bit of a run. And for you showdown players, well, I was going to say for showdown you might want to focus on the players that tee off on the front 9, but really that would have been incorrect because everybody's going to play these holes in succession. Really, for showdown purposes, you might want to focus on the guys that are playing the back 9 first, just because if they're able to somehow birdie hole 18, they've got 3 of the 4 easiest holes on the turn. Again, that's getting a little bit more specific, but at least from prior years, you probably want to target the players that are starting on the back 9, just because they have 2 par 5, 2 of the 3 par 5s are in that stretch, 17, 18, 1, and 2. are 3 of the 4 or 5 easiest holes. But whatever length there is in the course is in the par 5s. You got 570, 560, almost 600. There is one very long par 3 at 215, plays slightly over par. Not a whole lot of long par 4s other than the par 4 ninth at 503. So let's take a look at shot types and strokes gained per round for our top 10s. As you would expect, approach and putting, off the tee, outweighing the around the green, kind of a normal distribution, I would say. Putting maybe a little bit slightly ahead of the approach, and that's going to be a common theme. Much like last week, this can turn into a putting contest with it being so easy. Again, for our top 5s, the around the green starts to try to catch up to the off the tee, and then for the winners, you're making putts, but not a whole lot of separation here in the off the tee and the around the green. Again, these fairways are generally pretty wide, pretty easy to hit, so I'm not sure there's much to gain off the tee, as there are some places where not necessarily that you're forced to lay up, it's just the more prudent play. For example, the par 4 14th, that semi-drivable hole, if the tees are back, generally players are hitting iron off that tee just to put themselves in position, so there's not a whole lot to gain there with the driver and off the tee. So off the tee might be slightly mitigated here, is the way I'm thinking about early on this week. We move to average strokes gained by hole by par. Again, professionals are going to take advantage of the par 5s, but even with only 3 of them, you see how much they are taking advantage of these par 5s. 4s and the 3s, about what you would expect. Much the same for our top 5s. And then for our winners, the par 5s really pull ahead. So they're pulling out some eagles here, probably on the par 5 17th. 4% eagle rate on the par 5 second. So there will be some very good scores around TPC Deer Run, generally hovering around the minus 20 range. Is what the winning score has been the past 10 or so years. The exception is Michael Kim, I believe in 2018. He just ran away from the field, shot 27 under, but that is an outlier. Most of the time, it's around minus 20. So there's a look at the strokes gained by shot time, strokes gained by hole by par. We moved to hole composition. At least early on in our week, these par 3s are evenly split. We have a short par 3, a medium length, one long, and one very long par 3. So it'll be interesting to see tomorrow in the Data Dive show if, when they move tees and pins around, if one of these lengths of par 3s matters the most. My guess would be 200 to 225, but we don't really know, and we'll see that tomorrow. For our par 4s, we do have 2 shorter ones. Again, the one semi-drivable one, when they move tees and pins up, we do have another sub 400 par 4 on the front, par 4 6th. You see the eagle rate at 0.2%, so not nearly the level as the one on the back 9. Not really drivable. This one's pretty stock and standard as just a short par 4, as opposed to the other one. Majority of our par 4s fall from 400 to 450. We do have 3 fairly long and 1 extremely long par 4, and then all 3 par 5s fall between 550 and 600. Approach shot distribution fairly evenly split here around TPC Deer Run. About 20% in the 200 plus. Again, that's accounting for those par 5s that are getting attacked in 2. But due to the short nature of a lot of these holes, we got a lot of wedges in hand. 125 to 150 is right at 20%. 19% from 150 to 175 for those who aren't necessarily as long. So I'm quite interested to see if there's a proximity that matters. My initial guess is there isn't, but we'll check that in the Data Dive tomorrow. But there's a look at your approach shot distribution here at TPC Deer Run. Historic cut line was +2 all the way back in 2003, but every year, and I mean every year since, has the cut line's been under par. Mostly hovering in this -2 to -3 range, kind of alternating a little bit. You get -1s a little bit if perhaps the wind picks up quite a bit and whatnot, but generally -2 to -3, again signifying the ease here at TPC Deer Run. 22% or almost 22% birdies, only 13% bogeys. So, quite a few more scores under par than over par. The Eagles bar is actually somewhat seen as well. Few Eagles around here. Accuracy, very easy. These fairways are easy to hit. They're wide. Not a whole lot to them. There are some undulation changes, elevation changes, if you will, up and down as it rolls through the Midwestern hills of Illinois, but not a whole lot. Not a whole lot here in terms of difficulty for accuracy. Greens are easy to hit here, even though they are slightly smaller. They're easy to hit. Scrambling was easier. 3 putts per round or less. I mean, everything is showing you that it is an easy track for professionals. The distance is a little bit higher than the average tour event. I mean, players will take driver when they can on these shorter par 4s. And there are a few par 4s that demand the driver. Again, the par 4 ninth being 503, that demands a driver and a good long iron. But, there are a couple of forced layups or more prudent plays, if you will, but the distance is still higher, and that's why I just don't think there's a whole lot to be gained off the tee here. And then proximity, as you would expect with an easy course, this proximity, and with small greens, proximity is quite a bit closer to the hole by about 1.5 feet, which is a pretty big amount. So there's a look at TPC Deer Run and the John Deere Classic in terms of a scorecard and graphical view here in Fantasy National. We'll move back to the players in the field this week. I'll expand the time frame here, go to the last 2 years, as we're going to add this easy relative to par filter again. Much like we did last week for the Rocket Mortgage, we're going to be using this easy to par filter for the John Deere Classic. Again, as we saw a few minutes ago, most rounds here are easy. So when rounds are easy in the past 2 years, our top performers have been Patrick Cantlay, Bo Hostler, Sung Jae, Chan Kim, Doug Gim, Ben Coles, Ryo Hitsatsune, Luke List, Michael Kim, and Ben Griffin. So most of these players, with the exception of Cantlay and Sung Jae, also played in Detroit last week. And I am... let's see. Ben Griffin made the cut. Kim made the cut. List, I believe, made the cut. Hitsatsune and Coles did. Gim missed. Doug Gim did miss the cut. Chan Kim, I think missed the cut. So this might change a little bit, but generally speaking, these are the players that have played well when rounds are easy. You see Eric Cole with a very solid performance this past week. A top 10, just outside the top 10 in terms of easy course performance. Let's just take a look at a couple of things here. Again, my initial inclination is to not think off the tee matters too much, and if I'm wrong, I'll correct that, and we'll look at it more extensively tomorrow. But let's just take a look at the two main shot types here. So, in the past 24 rounds or 3 months, our top approach players in the field this week: Sepp Straka, Kevin Yu, Aaron Rye, coming off a very, very solid Rocket Mortgage, Lonto Griffin, Lee Hodges, JJ Spawn, Kelly Craft, Keith Mitchell, Chan Kim, and Ben Griffin. And then we'll take a look at some bent green putting performance. Again, TPC Deer Run is the only course I know of that has specifically L93. As I reach slightly off the camera and take a look at my course notes here, bent, yeah, so L93 bent. You can see the paper. I've got all the course specific putting on. L93 bent is the only one or TPC Deer Run's the only one with that specific L93 bent. So we're gonna have to just take a big picture view, if you will. So we'll check the bent green filter. I am gonna filter on the fast. With the GCSAA tournament fact sheet listing the stimp at 12, every single round the past couple of years has been fast. My assumption is that the greens will be fast. So on fast bent greens, the past 2 years or 36 rounds, our top putters have been Denny McCarthy, JT Poston, another former champion here, Harry Hall, Sung Jae, Harry Higgs, Justin Lauer, Mav McNeely, Taylor Montgomery, Brendan Todd, Chesson Hadley, and Adams Vincent. Those are your top 10 putters. So don't be surprised if we focus on these players a little bit more throughout the week, considering they're generally good putters on fast bent greens, and this turns into a putting contest a lot of the time. The only other thing I think we can probably take a look at in terms of a big picture view, I believe we did this last week. I was going to go with the par fives, and we can do a couple of them because generally the initial research shows are a little bit shorter on time. So let's do a couple of them. We're going to go with scoring. We're going to go with birdies are better when rounds are easy to par. 2 years. So your top birdies or better gained players in the field this week when rounds are easy to par: Eric Cole, Chan Kim, S.H. Kim, Sepp Straka, Taylor Montgomery, Sung Jae, Patrick Hanley, Ryo Hitsatsune, Luke List, and Scott Piercy. Again, it will be interesting to see how this changes when the Rocket Mortgage is loaded in tomorrow in Fantasy National. And then the other, just kind of big picture view that I want to take a look at, 3 par 5s here at TPC Deer Run. You got to take advantage of them. And they all fall between 550 and 600. So in the past 3 months, I remember I changed that. So in 2024, last 36 rounds, that's the way I did it. Just let me reset this and get myself situated. So 2024, 36 rounds. Your top par 5 performers from 550 to 600. Keith Mitchell, Nick Dunlap, who played very, very well at the Rocket Mortgage, Patrick Cantley, Bo Hostler, Jacob Bridgman, Ryan McCormick, Martin Trainer, Andrew Novak, J.A., and Tom Whitney. So be aware of these players as well. Bridgman was pretty darn good. Hostler made the cut. I don't think he did too well on the weekend, but made the cut. Nick Dunlap had a top 20. He might have top 10'd. Novak was a top 20 this past week at the Rocket Mortgage. McCormick made the cut. Fairly solid performance. So the par 5 performance at the Rocket Mortgage was a pretty big deal, and I see that being the case again this week at TPC Deer Run. Okay, so let's move to the strokes gained total tab. The strokes or the tournament history page view, if you will. Just resetting this to that page view. In the past 5 years at TPC, or I should say the past 5 editions, 2020 canceled for 2020 reasons. In the past 5 editions of the John Deere Classic, Lucas Glover is our strokes gained total leader. Winner in 2021 when he got on that heater. Another top 10 there, top 10. In Microsoft Excel, I'm excluding 2018, so just be aware of that. Adam Schenk has also played very well here. 2 top 5s, another top 10. Ryan Moore, Seamus Power has been pretty good here. Denny McCarthy, 2 top 10s in his past 2 years. He did miss the cut, in 2021 and 2019, so perhaps gaining some more course knowledge. JT Poston won in 2022. Again, our defending champion is Sepp Straka. Jordan Spieth has won this a couple of times. Hubbard, Svensson, Zach Johnson was a 2 or 3 time winner way back, in the late 2000s and early 2010s. So Zach Johnson's generally played well here. Dylan Fratelli, very interesting case, wins his first time coming to TPC Deer Run. Has not played terribly well since, but he is a former champion. Alex Smalley's been fairly good here. Trying to look at some other names. Sam Ryder, 3 for 4. I know it's technically 4 for 5. Again, I am taking out the 2018 since it's more than 5 years. Sam Ryder's been okay. Brendan Todd's been pretty solid. Cam Davis, pretty darn solid here. So there's some names that have generally played well at TPC Deer Run. And then the other side of the coin, players who haven't played well here: Sung Kang, Ben Taylor, Scott Piercy, Joseph Bramlett, Kevin Chappell 0 for 2, Brim, Sean O'Hare 1 for 3 with a top 15, Garnett 1 for 4, Austin Cook 2 for 4. So yeah, there's the players who have not played well historically at TPC Deer Run. With that, let's go to Microsoft Excel. The early look file for the week. Again, this is performance specifically at TPC Deer Run the past 5 years. So because 2020 was canceled, you see the most anybody has is 4. I don't go back any further than 5 years. To me, it just makes the data insignificant. So let's filter out the players who have only played it once. I want to see the players who have at least played it half of the time in that time frame. See what they have been doing well. See if we can't get a gauge on the types of players as we begin our look this week when odds come out tomorrow, when the pricing comes out tomorrow. Let's see the players if we can find who we might want to focus on. We look at off the tee. Several players positive here, but there's not a whole lot to be gained. We'll go down to maybe the top 40 or so. Yeah, it's about 18 players. That's enough. 2.5 is the highest. I mean, there's just not a lot here to be gained. Adam Schenk, who's one of the better course history players here, not a lot to be gained. You see he's done very well at all the other parts of his game. Just not a lot to be gained here. This is a 0.8, whereas in the approach, I mean, you got a 4.5 and a 4, 4.5 or close to it, 3.5. There's a lot to be gained with the irons. This is a 1.8, so a full shot higher. Around the green, much the same. Not a lot to be gained. A few players negative. It's not really that big of a deal here, I don't think. This is a 1.0, so surprisingly a little bit higher than off the tee. Okay. But really, it's about the approach and the putting. And the putting is a 2.2. So you got some 5s up here, or close to it. 4.5, 4.5, 3.5. But what you don't see are these huge negatives. The 2 players that are negative, averaging a top 40 at the John Deere, -0.2 and -1/10. I mean, Alex Smalley is not a good putter, but he's played here 3 times and he's only lost 1/10 on average. So putting is going to be a pretty big deal. I mentioned this with bad putters. Anytime they show any flashes, you might want to pay attention. So Alex Smalley might be a name to think about, considering he has shown that he is not an abject failure on these greens this week. Famous last words, I've just jinxed him, but he's at least shown to be pretty good. We move to driving and greens, fairways. Not a lot to be gained in the distance. As you see, Brendan Todd's never going to be long. He's played well here. Hubbard's, Vincent, Smalley. These guys just aren't long. Johnny Vegas, that's his game, sure, but this driving distance is barely above 0. It's just not necessary. It can help you. Like, see Johnny Vegas, see Nick Hardy. Adam Schenk's been positive in driving distance here. It can help you, but it's absolutely not mandatory. Fairways, there's been a few players that are negative in fairways, despite the fact that the rough is so difficult to play out of. And that's why I just don't think there's a whole lot to be gained off the tee. I just don't. The distance doesn't seem to matter. The fairways really don't seem to matter. Yes, Ryan Moore has hit a lot of them. Brendan Todd's hit a lot of them, but that's kind of their game. You see Johnny Vegas has played well in his 2 attempts here. Negative in fairways. Adam Schenk played very well here. Averaged a top 5 finish in the past 4 editions. Doesn't hit a lot of fairways, so I don't see much in the off the tee. The good drives gain's kind of interesting to me at first look. You got a couple players negative, but just kind of marginally so. Good drives gained could be something to look at this week. To 1.8. Greens 2.4. Greens generally outweigh good drives anyway. So I'll be interested to check the prior leaderboards tomorrow and get a feel for the upper echelon of these past performances. Is it good drives? Is it greens? I kind of like the idea of good drives this week, if anything. But we'll see. We'll have to see. Moving to scoring. As you would probably expect, the more consistent metric is the bogey avoidance. Although there is a lot of deep green up here in the bogey avoidance. But it's really about the birdies gained here at TPC Deer Run. This is a 2.3. Bogey avoidance a 2.7. It's kind of interesting. Okay. I would have thought it would have been all in the birdies gained. Hence why we looked at that in Fantasy National. Again, something else we can take a look at tomorrow. Because you got, like a 4.8, a 4.6, but you got a 5, a 4.5, 4.3, 3.9. It's close. It's close, but I would have thought the birdies gained were, massively ahead. This being an easy course. Might not be the case, because there are a couple of pretty difficult holes here where bogeys come into play. Particularly the closing on each 9, the 9th and the 18th. So maybe we might look at some bogey avoidance on not difficult. Bogey avoidance easy. Bogey avoidance 7,200 to 7,400. I usually don't like that filter though. I don't know. Kind of interesting. Par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Interestingly enough, the par 3s, only a couple players negative, and just marginally so, negative 0.2. There's not a lot to be gained here. 2.7 being the highest, a 2, 1.5, 1.5. Okay, there's a 2.5, but I mean, this total is a 1.1. The par 4s, 3.7. Not a single player negative. Only one player negative in the par 5s. This is a 1.1 as well. I would have thought that number would have been higher. Doesn't look like any particular range of par 3 matters, as you would expect. 1 in each of the buckets. 1, 1, 1, and 1. So anything we do with par 3s is going to be probably total par 3s and very little. Par 4s. You see, this is when they shorten that drivable one to make it drivable. Majority of them are in here. Looks like that's where the majority of the strokes gained are as well. But it's looking like just total par 4s early on this week. Par 5s. All 3 measured to this range on the scorecard. You see they do lengthen the 596. They do shorten the 560 to play under 550 from time to time throughout the week, but looks like mainly in here as well. And then a casual look at proximity. Total prox might be something, but again, that 125 to 150 range. Look at the players who have consistently played well here at TPC Deer Run. They're generally performing well from that distance. So my guess is that's the range we would want to focus on if we want to focus on a specific range of proximity, but not terribly convinced. But that's what I have for you all in terms of an initial research show. I want to thank you all for tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel. by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do, taking an in-depth look at golf statistics, mostly sports statistics, but mostly golf statistics. Giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees. Trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Hasn't been great the past couple of weeks, so we're going to try to rebound in a big way this week for the John Deere Classic. Again, put it in the comments. If you had any success, I would love to be able to shout out members of the community who have success week over week. So make sure to let me know about any success you had for the Rocket Mortgage. I hope yours was far better than mine. For all the wagers you made this past week for the Rocket Mortgage, for all the DFS contests you played this past week at the Rocket Mortgage, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.